Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, members of the media. You are welcomed to this press briefing. It's the press briefing that the offices of the Legal Services Ombud will be informing the members of the public about the progress made since Judge Desai was appointed in 2020 by the President of the country. I'm going to introduce the panel. We have got the Chair Nell Mampa, is one of our legal practitioners responsible for investigation of complaints. We have got Mr. Ramoroga, who is the head of legal services. We have got the Ombud, Judge Desai, who is the Ombud of the legal services, one of its kind in South Africa since its inception in 2020. My name is Victor Saroga. I'm the acting CEO of the Office of Legal Services Ombud. And without wasting any time, I'm going to allow Judge the Ombud of Legal Services to read the statement. Then we will then take questions from the boardroom, and then we'll take questions via WhatsApp. Ombud, thank you very much. You can read from the seat there.
No, the microphones are here.
Thank you, Mr. Saroka. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a privilege to be here. This is a center one normally sees on television, so for a layperson to be here is quite intimidating. Let me say why a press conference is warranted at this stage. 2 weeks ago, the President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, made the last sections of this act, placed them in operation. The sections that deal with the appointment of panels to hear appeals from decisions made by the disciplinary committees of the Legal Practice Council. But let me start off not simply to read a statement, but to say basically a reminder to what we are and what the Office of the Legal Ombud does. As you know, I was appointed 2 years ago. It's taken a long time to get where we are because the office started from scratch. We didn't have officers, we didn't have staff, we didn't have very much background to go on. I'm the first Ombud for the country. So we started off with borrowed staff from the Department of Justice. We now have a full complement of attorneys. Unfortunately, they're based only in Johannesburg, in Gauteng, sorry, and in Cape Town, and we hope to expand at a later stage. But let me also emphasize one important factor right at the beginning. The offices of the legal ombud, or the legal ombud, is intended to be an independent office, independent of government, independent Department of Justice. We're currently reliant upon the Department of Justice for our funding, but in the course of the next 12 months, we hope to be entirely independent and be funded by the Department of Finance. That's work in progress, but we have to do that because the Act emphasizes that the work we do should be independent from state intervention, from state authority. That's the first point I make. The second point I wish to make is just to remind all of us what the office of the Ombud really is. The Ombud is created by statute, and the most important part of the work of the Ombud is set out in section 46 of the Legal Practice Act. And the objects are very clearly stated. They're clearly stated, but they create a lot of confusion as well. The first object is that the Ombud has to protect and promote the public interest in relation to the rendering of legal services as contemplated in this Act. In other words, it's the function of the Ombud to ensure that the public interest is protected. That's what the Ombud does. The second important aspect is this, and this creates a great deal of confusion, is to ensure the fair, efficient and effective investigation of complaints of alleged misconduct against legal practitioners. Now, it goes on, there are further objects as well. But what is clear is that the Ombud has wide investigative powers. It has wide powers to ensure that justice is efficient, that it's fair, and most importantly, the interests of the public are protected insofar as justice itself is concerned. That's an important part of the fundamental part of the work we do. As I said earlier, there was a delay also in the appointment of an appeals process. You know, many of the convictions or acquittals of attorneys by the Legal Practice Council are in limbo because they appeal and there was no or is no appeals process set out. Sorry, not in operation. But with the promulgation of the Act, sections of the Act 2 weeks ago, that makes it possible now for appeals to be heard. Now, where does the Ombud come into this? The appeals are heard. Say you overreach clients and you are found guilty by the LPC, and it appoints and it finds you guilty. Then you appeal to a body, a appellate tribunal. That consists not simply of attorney and an advocate, but is innovative in the sense that it includes a lay person. And the lay person comes from the roster which we set up and which we have prepared, an assessment of lay. It's called lay assessors. But just that's a term that's used to describe lay participation in the conduct of professionals. It's an important innovation. It's important in several respects because it gives a fairer outcome to the issue that arises, but it also democratizes the legal process and subjects offending attorneys to the democratic will of the people in the broad sense of the word. We've been honored, actually, when we advertise for lay assessors, the quality of people that applied to be appointed as lay assessors. We have several professors on the roll. We have several medical doctors, social workers, psychologists who have applied to be lay assessors. So it's not simply lay people in the sense of ordinary people. It's also, well, intended to be ordinary people, they are, but they're also high caliber people who've made themselves available to serve as lay assessors. I can understand where we may need people of that caliber because some of the decisions are complex. You know, lawyers often commit offences which require some level of public participation in deciding whether it's offensive or not. It's also a safeguard, I think, that the drafters of the legislation had in mind, in that lawyers don't just protect their kith and kin, that the work that the lawyers do is subject also to some process outside of the profession. That's an advance. I've looked through legislation throughout the world, and it seems that we're the only one or two other countries in the world that have this level of participation. There is the problem, though, that the Act makes provision for also investigations to have a lay assessor, which they can draw from our list. The problem with that is it may not be practicable to appoint a layperson in each investigation because the cost factors involved. But insofar as the appellate tribunal is concerned, it must consist of a layperson as well. And we are ready. We have presented our list both to the Minister and to the Legal Practice Council. We're still working out the finer details of how the list is to be implemented. But I want to say to all the role players that we cannot keep these matters hanging in the air, the appeals that are being lodged, and we must attend to its finalization. That I personally and my staff have presented to the LPC our list of lay assessors. How the list is to be used, in fact, in what order do we use the list, that sort of detail is still to be worked out, but that's a matter of detail. And a matter of will to ensure that the appeals are heard summarily. The long delay is unacceptable because it means that attorneys who have, or advocates for that matter, who have committed serious unethical conduct are still practicing as attorneys. We're waiting for an appeal to be heard. So we hope that sort of problem will not proceed. But let me just go to what my staff have mentioned as the things that we have done, the press statement that has been issued. I was appointed in December 2020, a few days when I retired as a judge. I was appointed to this job, and it's a 7-year appointment, me into the 2 years already. And we have a dedicated team of staff members. Besides the delays, you know, getting competent attorneys to work at government rates is a very difficult process because your best don't necessarily apply for such jobs. But I am pleased to say and proud to say that we have the 5 attorneys that we have appointed are of a high caliber, most are experienced, all are bright, and I'd be happy to work with them in ensuring that justice is made available to the people who walk into our office and to the country as a whole. We started accepting complaints in June 2020, when the office was operational. The office itself, we are currently currently squatting, actually. That's the correct South African term. We are squatting in the offices of the Law Reform Commission here in Centurion and in the offices of the State Law Advisors in Cape Town. That's not a desirable state of affairs, but you know our government processes work, so it takes time to get proper officers and staff. But we are functional, and the offices meet our requirements for present purposes. The office here, with both offices, are easily accessible to the public, and we hope we can do that on a more permanent basis. As is indicated, we have 2 offices, one in Cape Town and one in Johannesburg, one in Pretoria. That's not desirable at this stage because most of the complaints, or many of the complaints emanate from KZN, and we should as soon as possible move to an office in KZN as soon as funds become available. That's one of the priority that we have in mind. KZN is a difficult area for this sort of thing, and we should actually get an operation going there as soon as possible. Most of the complaints, as staff point out in the media statement, emanate from complaints against the LPC. Now, we can't simply make an LPC, it's legal practice council. Sorry, I use the term LPC. That's meant to be the legal practice council. We don't simply usurp the function of the legal practice council. We acknowledge the importance of the legal practice council. It is the ultimate governing body of the profession itself. We just supervise it in a sense that we see that if anything goes wrong, and we protect the interests of the public. So most of the complaints we refer back to the LPC, but what we then do, what my staff does, they monitor the matter and see whether there's a speedy resolution. Most relate to delays. They relate to all sorts of complaints which attorneys get up to. We have resolved many matters. Not that many as a staff complement warrants, because some complaints have been quickly resolved, and in some areas of the country the complaints have been slow or non-existent. We are acutely aware of the fact that this is a diverse country with diverse interests in all parts of the country. So what we are doing, and we have started doing, is going on road shows, and this is probably part of that, to promote the office so that people with complaints do come to us. We've started in KZN, where we had a very resounding success, and we intend to go in July to the north as soon as possible, in sometime in July. And in the course of the year, we will go try to get to all parts of the country. And hopefully that will make the office known not simply to the legal profession, but to the public as a whole. I mean, we ultimately are a public interest institution. As my staff point out, there have been the successes. Primary success was it took some time to get the president to sign the proclamation. It had to go through various processes, and that process has been completed now, and we're ready to operate insofar as the appeals are concerned. We hope to work closely with the LPC in that regard, and I will be in contact, or have been in contact in the past, with Janine Myberg, who is the president of the LPC. So we hope to expedite the many appeals which are sitting in the offices of the LPC. And although the section has now been approved, and there's no bar to the matter being heard. As I've already stated, the presence of lay people on the appellate tribunal introduces a different measure of a different standard to ensure that the decision is not simply fair and just, but it reflects the public interest in the life and work of attorneys. We have actively collaborated with the many stakeholders that are involved. I mentioned the Legal Practice Council, but we're also in contact with other ombuds in the country. Incidentally, we refer to this as ombud because when this act was promulgated, I recall the days, the gender lobby objected to be called an ombudsman. Ombudsman is a term used in Denmark, where it originated, and both men and women were referred to as ombudsmen. But in this country, this act refers to the ombudsman as the ombud for the legal profession. That's the historical origin of the term, a different term in South Africa. You know, what is important today, and as Ms. Mupanga quickly points out in her statement, is that there are very many instances of breaches by attorneys which appear in the public domain. Although we reliant upon complaints being lodged with us, we are not a complaint referral body. We can, of our own accord, look at what is happening in the country and take up an issue. In other words, we have our own jurisdiction as well. I am deeply concerned about the fact that there is a crumbling of observing legal ethics in the practice by lawyers, which impacts not simply upon the image of the organization, but also impacts upon the sense that justice has been done in a matter. I was a judge for 25 years, and I do not recall a single instance in which the counsel did not observe decorum in my court. I would not have tolerated it. But the counsel, although, you know, I was appointed on this, I was the first person of color from Cape Town appointed to the bench. So there was hostility from the established profession to my appointment. But despite that, I mean, all acquiesced eventually in accepting the norms and practices of the profession to their credit, to credit of all. So I think, although I may be the last person to say so, but because of my own boisterous personality, that it is important that all practitioners observe the decorum in our courts and project the image of the profession. It is a vital core of democratic practice that justice not simply is a judgment delivered, but the process of judging is made an acceptable norm. You know, I gave the first judgment making television to be used for televised proceedings. That's the case in the Van Breda case. It went on to the appellate division and they confirmed the order in different terms. But I accept that television is important, that recording of evidence is important, that the display of the judiciary in functioning judiciary is important to the public. We've gone a long way in making the courts open and transparent. But let us not let the side down by impinging upon the integrity of the court, which then ultimately affects its functioning. We are in the process of we've established and fulfilling our mandate. We have a wide mandate. We all hope that I can live up to the expectations of what the law envisages. It may be difficult to do so because of the very wide nature of the mandate which we have, but we do so to the best of our ability. Many of us have been lawyers for a long time. We know what the demands of the profession are. One of the key issues that keeps on arising, and I do not wish to offend lawyers who may be listening to this broadcast, is that the excessive fees charged by private practitioners. I'm not suggesting that it should be regulated, but if the practitioners do not bring a sense of realism to the fees they charge to actual practice, to clients, they not only diminish the profession and make it inaccessible to the poor, but they also then create two tiers of justice. Justice for the poor and justice for the rich. The rest of the rich getting the best available counsel. You know, so we must ensure that even the poor have the best of counsel at times, and that that justice is to them an equal source of relief as it is to the very rich. We are challenged. We faced, as a country, we face challenges to make the country acceptable, to make democracy acceptable, to make a functioning democracy accessible. And I hope as Ombud to contribute to that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge Design, the Ombud of Legal Services. From here, we're going to take questions. We're going to start in the boardroom. I'm aware that there are some of the colleagues that have joined through the link. We will start with the questions here, and then after that, then we'll jump to the other side of the questions. I see your hand. Yeah, you can introduce yourself, and then the media that you are representing, and then the question. And then you can speak a bit louder. Thanks.
How many complaints have you received since your appointment in 2020? How many appeals do you have at the moment? And when do you expect, if there's going to be an appeal panel to be appointed?
Thank you.
Yes. No. Any other question? Do we have a question online on WhatsApp, if it's there, so that we can take both of them?
Thank you. So far, we don't have any questions from online. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Ramroka, can you deal with that question?
Good morning or good afternoon. The second question, what was it?
How many appeals do you have at the moment, and when do you expect the appeal panel, if there's going to be appointed?
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The complaints received, that is a list we have, but not at the moment. However, we will make it available in due course. Regarding the appeals that we have, remember, as the Ombud indicated, we will not deal with the appeals ourselves. The list created, or rather Section 41, that has been recently promulgated, which deals with the appeals, is the one that will be handled by the LPC. That list, it's there, and we're waiting for the LPC to indicate to us when they're ready to start. And as he has indicated, we are in contact with them, liaising with them to ensure that the process can proceed as speedily as possible. The layperson's list, which that layperson will form part of the appeal panel, is already done and has already been handed over to the LPC. As to when that process will start, I've already indicated that we are waiting from them, because it's a process that will engage on their processes, how they deal with them. As he said, there's already a huge backlog of matters that needs to be appealed on. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Ramroka. It looks like we don't have any further questions. And we want to take this opportunity from the Office of Legal Services Ombud to the members of the media, so that the public can know that this office is ready to deal with all other questions that are and complaints against legal practitioners. We want to thank you very much, and the briefing is urgent. And those who want to have one-on-one interview with the judge, you can have that after this briefing. Thank you very much. Thanks.
May I please have the name of Mr. Rasa?
Okay.